So how is everyone doing? Super fine, I hope. Yeah,
Okay.
thumbs up. As I wrote in the invite, I thought that we should look at the external components once more, and I think you, Henrik Törnvall, you also asked for a bit more info about those things.
Yeah, that's right.
And we had a good example just last week when we met a brand new customer for us, and they had some needs doing a portal for that involved 3D models. And we should just do a short introduction to try to show what we can do in order to get a decision if they're gonna go with us or not. So we poked around a bit for how we could do 3D things with the MDriven and Turnkey, and found that it was actually quite easy. So I thought that we should show how we went about that. So I'm gonna present. And let me know if you see my screen now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the end, what we're gonna do is something that has a widget like this in the normal standard default model that we always use for small examples, and that you can like grab like this and move around and zoom in or out, and even upload a new 3D model to have it like that. So this is the what we're gonna see in the end, and how we can get this going. Okay, so how do we do this? Let's shut this down and start a new. I'm gonna leave that one. So I'm gonna open So what we saw was that we want to have a new field right about here that shows the 3D model, and the 3D model comes in a component which is JavaScript based, and as we know by now, we can find those things in the wiki. And note to you, Lars, maybe this has stopped working, but I was under the impression you should be able to write like a star, but now maybe it's like this.
I can't really.
It's the underscore that shouldn't be there when I search. So the underscore means something to the wiki, so that's probably it. So X components, and that's something that it's a folder that you create, and then you can put JavaScript components in there. And as with all these things that affects the server, we do it with the assets folder. So let's head over to the model directory. This is the model that I'm using, demo modeler, this one. And then I have a folder, demo _ assets tk, and this assets tk name is something that is recognized by Turnkey as assets for Turnkey, and everything that's in here will be packed when we execute the application and expanded into the application. So subfolders will be subfolders in the application. And then we can put ext components in here. And here we can put our components. So we're gonna find my component that I want to use, and we're gonna look at that. It's over here. Just a minute. So my component is always placed in a folder, and the folder name is the component name. And everything within this folder will also be loaded into the application once the application goes. So in this case, or everything in the folder, I say, everything that's either CS, HTML, or JS, or CSS. That's the things that we recognize, the normal web building things. So let's take a look at this one. It's just real simple. It has an embedded style, and it has a div that has a directive, an Angular directive on it. So we need not worry too much about that, but what this directive will do is try to find it within Angular if there's any directive that's named like this. I can see now that I have spelled it wrong. It should be TH, but since I spelled it wrong all the way, probably it's fine. This is standard HTML, this is standard HTML, and this as well, of course. It's only this that's not standard and not recognized by the browser as such. It's something that Angular picks up on. And how can it know to pick up on that? That's defined in the JavaScript file for this component. And it's really down, the important thing is down here. Above here, it's only functions that are used by, once we load it, it will call this method, install the directive for ThreeJS. And it will install it into the module that is our application. So this is something that you know, and this is something that comes from Angular, and this is something that we declare up here. So we get a controller, and this is not typed since it's JavaScript, but it's a Angular controller that we get in here. And with one of those, this is pretty much boilerplate. You can just copy code like this and reuse it for some other purpose. We say what the directive name is. So this name here matches this name here. So when the application loads, when Angular sees this, it says, aha, but I know about one called ThreeJS. Whenever I see a div like that has this, I'm gonna call this function and offer to link the scope and the element. And this is the important thing, because the scope is the data from our application, and the element is the element for the application. So the element in this case will be this div, and the scope will be some data that we choose to bind to it. And now we have an opportunity to connect data, and that's a JavaScript object, with markup. And this is the only time when it's feasible to do this connection between data and JavaScript objects, or data and markup. So this is what Angular does for us. It makes sure that whenever one of these change, or if there's all of a sudden a lot of more elements having the directive ThreeJS on them, it will call this function again. And then we get a new opportunity to do something at that point. So the important is that the directive is named like that, but the component is named as the folder name. So that's the component name. To actually use a component, first we need to have a place where to use it. So we can just put a generic column over here and drag that out so it's a little bit bigger. And we want this one to show our component instead of the edit box that's here now. And we need to signal that with tagged values. And we say it's going to have an Angular external component, X component. I'm going to add this tag value. And the value for this Angular text value component tag should be the name of the component. Only the name of the folder in the X components, like that. Let's remove this and just make sure that we run this application. First, I've added the text field. I'm gonna press play, and the Turnkey prototyper, I'm gonna start that one. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. I'm just gonna start it. Oh, let's write something here and can show the new thing where we now if we try to navigate while we have something unsaved, we get save and continue. Right, Dennis? It's good work. So here's the component, and it's just a text box in this case, but we want to override it. So now I can actually close this. I don't need to have it open, and I open this one, head over here, set the tag value tag to ThreeJS, close this one. If I now save the model, this prototyper will discover the change and immediately reload the application. Whenever I do some changes to the modeler file, the Turnkey application that has been started this way, the local prototyper mode, will immediately discover the change in the file and reload the application. And what happened was that the component was put in place. So now we see we have a 3D box rotating over there, and it's quite easy to go into, let's see, to sources and find the X components ThreeJS, find the module within, and perhaps set a breakpoint here. And if we were to, I guess it stays, if we reload the page, now we get stuck on the breakpoint. So this is quite easy to see what happens and how it works. And here I can just step inside with F11. And now we're in the code that's part of the component to init the stuff in ThreeJS. And this is sort of just stolen somewhere from the internet, and it's much better to look at it in Notepad. It's depending on a couple of other files, and I've found this on CDN Skypack Dev, and that's a way to get packages into your application. Of course, you could download it and round trip it within your application as well. But if you trust the package, you can go like this. It will be cached in the browser anyway. So, and there's one thing that I should mention, because ThreeJS actually use modules for JavaScript, and that's not brand new, but newer than plain vanilla JavaScript. And actually we didn't support to have module loading, because in order to load modules, JavaScript modules, you need to have a tag on the script that loads it. So I have written about this in the wiki, that we changed our behavior to whenever the JavaScript file contains or ends with module, then we're going to assume that it is a module. So it's easy to just rename it module, and then we will load it as a module, and then things to load other modules, etc. will work better. So we end up in init 3D, and it creates a camera and a scene and a geometry, and that's this box. Gives it some material and adds and a mesh is created from the geometry and the material and added to the scene. And then there's a renderer created, which is the thing that actually draws stuff, and there's a size set on that renderer, and there's an animation loop set, and it's added to element. So element append child renderer DOM element. So the renderer's DOM element, which it creates itself, is added to the element that we sent in. And the element we sent in was the div that we got from when Angular found that there's a piece of data that needs connecting with markup. So if we remove this one, that means that it's actually feasible to, I guess, do one more. And saving that. And now we would have two. I think that it's a global variable holding it, so and that wasn't the perfect choice for this. We need to fix that in the component if we want to have that working. Never mind. But that's how components can help you. And now you can have this component on any screen and multiple screens. So it's really a good environment to work in. Whenever you do changes and save, the UI is updated automatically. Now we want to have an ability to not just show this box. We want to pour some data into here. And where we're going to get the data from? Well, the 3D model is most likely a binary or some kind of blob. So let's make some room for that. Let's call it some blob. Like that. And we can then add a field to upload a data to this. let's put this one. Oh, let's spell it correctly. And if I have that one over there and save, I get the ability to pour data into some blob. Now I need the some blob to load into the component. And what the component does, it takes the data it gets, and which is the root position, which is the data corresponding to this new column, which shows the column. And that will probably just be default because it's, or it will be the same as the root of this one. And then...
Hey Hans, why are those all self dot some string or self dot some value? What's that self?
So all these view model columns are OCL expressions.
Right.
So self is grabbing the context from where you are, and in this case it's thing. And why is it thing? Because that's the root of the view model. So if we were to go down here, it says self again, but then it's self from this context, detail. So here self is actually a detail.
I think you don't need to use self in this specific. I think you can go without it, but then you risk confusion about what you're actually referring to. So
Yeah,
most
so
of the time we use self, because otherwise it can be misinterpreted. Some string could either be an attribute or a class, and then it will be
right. Right.
So it's like in C#, and this would also be okay. And it says it's a string, but this is more precise. And of course, we could do other things like mold the value somehow to do changes to the value in the expression. Of course, now it won't be editable because this won't be able to write back.
And if you were to make a formatted string like that, you would probably do that in the root class, not in the view model, right?
Yeah, so if it's gonna be a read-write formatted string, you would most likely do a read-write derived or a reverse derived attribute. So you would set the attribute mode to not persistent but derived settable, because then you get two expressions, one that is for how it should render and one how to act on a value when it's set.
But if you have a formatted string for thing, let's say you wanted to concatenate a person's first and last name,
Yeah.
you would probably put that derived attribute in thing and then reference it in the view model. That way you can use it in all your view models,
Yes.
right? There probably isn't a performance hit, right?
No. So that would be the smart thing to do to move things down. It's always like that when you're dealing with UI, that initially you do something in the view, but then you think again, and maybe I'm gonna use this, but maybe not, and you leave it in the view, and then you discover that, well,
you need it somewhere else.
I didn't need it, and then you move it. So and that's the process, I guess.
Yeah.
So where were we? We have some blob that we able to upload now, like this. But what we have here, it says it's gonna watch the view model root and a specific name. So this is sort of hard coded into the component. Doesn't need to be done this way, but it is just in this case. So let's go with that. it will look for changes. So these are things that Angular provides. Watch this for me, and if it changes, act. Do this function with the new value, the old value, and where it's going. So that means that if we were to call this view model column, have a 3D model here, and save it, if we upload a model, it reacts to that and loads and calls this function load STL, and STL is one of the formats that we can load into 3D engines. So we're gonna see what that does. Load STL gets a file URL, and it creates something from within the free motor, and creates a STL loader that actually does a geometry and a material, sets some scale, adds to the scene, and updates. And that means that if I load something else, take this boat over here, and it changes to this boat instead. So this means that we have been able to render whatever we want, and we can store the data wherever we want in the model. And it's a reusable thing, sort of, that we can move around and have in any UI we see fit, and also in any application we see fit, because we just need to copy the file now and follow a pattern. So, and we do all the components that we do like that it's just a zipped folder that you can unzip and use, and then there's a description attached to it that describes what the pattern should be in order to make it work. Like, what's the name of the AngularJS component tag value that you're going to use, and what are its capabilities. What should things be named in order for the logic in the component to find it. And that way the component need only be concerned about what it thinks is important to render something and what it calls stuff. And you are always able to accommodate what the component wants, since this is not done on the model level, but rather on the view model level. So you can do, you can have any name that the component requires to have it work. Those names doesn't necessarily need to be shown. Like, if this is a requirement for this component, I can still call this something else. So, and we're not forced into showing internal details of our data. Now it reloaded before I saved, so this turned back into the default. I'm gonna go for the bowl once more. If I save this and it's loaded from the sort of database, even if that's an XML file. And let's see if I do let's see if I do another one, call that 2, and view that, save and continue. I can have a boat on this and save that. So, and then of course I guess I can press Control to get a new window and open this one. Now I have this one here and that one here.
Hans, one thing that they might be ready for now is that you talked about the view models and the data, and usually a component has like a root, the first object, the top object for its data, and then you have a list of attributes or something underneath it. And you talked about the view models, and what happens in the client, generally speaking, the turnkey client, is that your view model is copied. All the data that is you have defined in your view model will become JavaScript objects in the exact structure. So you'll always have your complete view model by its definition basically available or copied or updated or all the time in the client. So that's why you can make a component and then you design a subtree in your view model to feed it with data, and that data will be automatically sent to the client and maintained in the client. And if the component changes anything in that data, it will be automatically uploaded to the server and the save button will light up. Or if you have autosave, it will be saved right away. So you can use anything that runs in JavaScript in a browser basically can be wrapped into this Angular directive, and then you can put it into your view. And because it's not like Turnkey special, it's not MDriven special, it's plain JavaScript standard feature.
Yeah,
So
and if there's anything special to Turnkey, it's the fact that the objects are not copied in one big batch. They are sort of streamed back to the client. So this is the data that's available for this view. And whenever something changes, not everything is reloaded as in MVC, but just the values that are affected are changed. So that makes it quite efficient and soft on the network. And of course, since it's utilizing signal R to real-time signal when something changes, it's really soft on the network. It doesn't happen anything until you were to take up another view and watch the same thing and change this value and that would be updated here. But when I think of it, we're on the prototyper mode, and that doesn't have a server, so the propagation probably won't work that way here. No. So that was a bad example, but that's something that will happen on normal clients.
You're not on the same object, right?
That could also be an explanation.
I think so. So you can use anything that flies on a web browser, and it will be, you could say, bindable. You'll have JavaScript objects, and they will be streamed, as we call it, back and forth to the server. So there's, I haven't seen yet, at least, anything that just doesn't work. It will work, but so you'll get the whole infrastructure of data management and modeling and all those things, but you can still plug in any JavaScript component client side. Of course, it as soon as you go this path, you bind yourself a bit to the client. I mean, the client technology. So it's not client technology agnostic, because of course now we have made special things for the web browser. But as long as you keep yourself there, well, you'll be fine, and at least the data will be consistently handled across technology shifts in the future.
And since components are treated just like this is one component and this is another component, then it will work with the tag expander thing as well to replace things on pages. So then you could access this component and place it wherever you like if you want to do serious stuff with redesigning the page. Maybe we should try that with tag expander. If there aren't any other questions, I can give it a go.
Well, it's a problem if you have 1 hour to fill with demos and it's too quick to get results. I think that's a kind of cool feature, though. You know, it would be even cooler if it wasn't that black thing. I mean, that has nothing to do with this example, but I kind of see it as it would be a cool thing just to have a little spinning 3D object there for coolness in the UI.
Yeah, so knock yourself out. You can attack, I guess, somewhere here. It's the scene background or the camera or something. I'm not that fluent in 3D stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's possible to do whatever you need on with this pretty cool library, ThreeJS. So in order to do tag expander, we need to put a views folder, and in the views folder we would do a ext override pages, and in the ext override pages we will put the page that we want to override. Let's override this one. So we will do a new text document, view one thing, and tag expand. HTML. Are you sure? Let's see if I got that right. Tag expander CHTML should be in the text overrides. Doesn't. Yeah, and gonna open that with Notepad and write test. This application won't reload until I resave the model. Alright, we're rocking. So I have full control of the page, and then I can do things like accessing control names. So what are the control name? Well, it's the name of the view model column. I haven't tried this, so let's see if it works. Need to resave that one. Yay. And of course, if you wanted to remove the menu bar, which we sometimes do, there was this special no menu thing. and just to show that we have full HTML control here. Saving that, saving the model to make the asset TK go around. So now we have that, and maybe we want to bring in this one as well so that we can upload stuff. Saving that and doing save on the model to make this round trip. And now I can change things here. Loading the bowl instead. But now I'm in trouble because this has changed state. It's new, but there's no way to save it. So that's something that we need to work with when taking full responsibility, to maybe add back the save buttons. So if I change it again to the bowl, now the save button has lit up and I can save it too. So it's amazingly fast to do whatever you want with HTML in the tag expander without needing to break your back on how to access data in a complex model. So this is really super cool for anyone that wants to take full control to make something that doesn't resemble MDriven Turnkey in any way. But still make use of the definitions.
Hooray!
Very cool.
Yeah.
And how will you go about letting the users interact more with the, I guess, the 3D stuff or other graphical components?
Yeah.
Would you use view model variables like vCurrent, or
So
how could you do that, basically?
it depends. If you have a component with a lot of internal information, internal fluent information that you want to change, you could do it like when you do these directives that react to data changes, there is no limitation. You can have multiple directives within a component, and then you could do internal data by assuming that in this div there's going to be a list of something else that has a new directive on it. And that's how we did the Gantt chart. That's just a component, and it's easy to inspect that. Let's see if we... I think we have a...
Don't you have also this when and where house uses Google Maps?
Yeah.
Is that the same way?
Yes, is that a... Let's see if that's a example that we have applied somewhere. I don't know if it's live. It's easy to apply, but I haven't tested it.
There's an example at least in the wiki. I mean, not working, but I think there's images there. And
Yeah.
I think what you've basically done is write your data-bound data into the Google Maps, and then that data you can add things on the Google Maps, and it's stored in your database.
So let's see, this is a component with a lot of internal logic, and there's some clips to show how to go about to create those, and those are available on the wiki to sort of get access to also. So the tiny MCE editor, it doesn't have detailed internal data that we control. It's more like the 3D editor, I guess. Of course, you can write data, and that data is saved in a result, but here's a good example on that Christina has done, probably, where you can sort of do internal data and change internals of this. So these values will probably be something from a list in your model. So follow a link in the view model.
Do we have any questions about this or something else, or
or wishes for the next time, maybe? And Damien, I need to say I'm sorry again. I haven't done the stuff that I promised you, but things have been piling up in front of, between me and you, so to speak.
That's okay. I'm going to be working on that in a while, but when you can, yeah, your help's always appreciated.
Yeah, and also try to look around amongst your friends if there are more people susceptible to going the MDriven way, because we really need reinforcement in many projects that we have, and there's a lot of stuff to do, and as it looks, it's gonna be more and more during the year, so it's really important to find able bodies to swing the sword.
I have just mention that we have been doing more and more to have the right-click menu working in the UI, and you have these 3 dots that show up if you don't have a mouse to right-click. And we will probably take the next step by being able to that one. That in the future there will be a setting for Turnkey that will remove all the list actions from the left menu and just show them in there, and then we will see how that feels if maybe no one wants them to the left. I don't know, but it's an interesting prospect to see if we can move all those things into each table on the screen. And then the question comes, where should we put the left menu? Because it's probably going to be only a few things in there after that. And the save and cancel buttons. So we're not removing the left menu, because I think in some cases it's very good to have it clearly stated. But I realize myself that I use the right click a lot. because then you're sure exactly which row you're actually acting on.
But on Mac, there's no right-click button. Is it a long click, or how does that work? Or
It seems there is a right click, I think.
or they use the three buttons? Maybe.
Couldn't the left menu or like is that activated by the hamburger icon up there?
Yeah, it's switched by that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's usually probably the global actions, like when you have views there up there.
Yeah.
It'd be more
So
intuitive to have it there, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So something like this, maybe it should sort of pop down like this.
Or slide on top, not slide away the things underneath. And yeah, so we'll be looking at that, and of course taking inspiration from how others are doing it, mainly Google, I would guess, just because Google is a thing, you know, if we get criticized for our way of doing it, we can always point to Google and say, well, it's not our idea, Google does it. And then we cannot. But that doesn't mean that we don't want your input on if we shouldn't do it like the Google way, and not all use cases are the same. So definitely, Emily, something like clicking up there.
So we have the issue with the save and cancel button. We need to sort of make the user aware of those without taking up any real estate to show them, because this is much too wasteful for the expensive screen maybe. So
yeah, and of course we need a way to do it both on a computer so it feels like natural there, and on a phone. And if we can at least make two different approaches but that are making sense in both scenarios, it would be great. So that's what we're trying to do, and finding our ways to get better screen space usage out of the UI without, of course, changing anything. It should just magically become better, and you as a modeler haven't done anything with it. So,
but maybe that this thing is a sort of classified as a pretty large change, so that we should have sort of the old mode available if you
I think so.
have
like with the save and cancel buttons, could there be some way to incorporate this save action in other elements in the view or something, instead of having to always save if you change some?
yeah, to have some sort of autosave.
Yeah.
What's the status on the autosave?
So I don't know if there's any specific work item for autosave. We have always said that it's pretty easy to do a periodic action on the page and subscribe or have it enabled if the self VM dirty list is bigger than nothing. If it's not empty, then save.
There is a tagged value, I think, for autosave.
Yeah, eco.autosave on. If you set that tag value on the whole view model, it autosaves. It's not perfect, I think, and the reason that I haven't found exactly how to frame it, because we also don't want to destroy the functioning of, for example, a modal that opens on top of an autosave form. Should that modal also be assumed to be autosaving, which is not maybe what you want? So the autosave, you need to both use the autosave tag value on the whole view model, but then I would also include it on actions to say that it should save on navigation and save on.
So it's pretty obvious that one would want the ability to save on actions, and we have added that. it's not quite as obvious to autosave on a changing form, mainly because it produces a lot of traffic to the database if you're going to save all the time. That might not be a problem, but if you have like a history server and you're recording all the changes, that might not be what you want. Every keystroke is recorded basically, at least if you type slow. So it depends. It's not obvious that we should go that route to that it will fit all the cases to autosave everything in the application.
Yeah, it depends on the type of app you're building.
Yeah.
It's primarily mobile. You expect it to be autosave.
Yeah. So mobile, you often don't want yet another click, because it's often very simple applications that you push something and then you're done.
Yeah.
Like a Mac.
So what I think you can have autosave in, I would say almost all cases now without having to use a periodic action. But still evolving if there are some cases where we would need to modify how autosave can be done without it. But it can always be managed with what Hans said, to have a periodic action that runs when something is dirty and that it saves.
Yeah.
You know what? One thing I do, which you might want to consider, because I have autosave in some functionality and not in others, usually in mission critical, obviously. I put a timer that I display the expected autosave time, and I'll put that on a button. And so you can force a save with the button, but you can see on the button's caption that, the autosave is going to happen in X number of seconds or minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
That way your user, because if you don't have consistency throughout your entire UI, that's confusing to your user. But if you're explicit like that, then your user can see what's going on.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. So time is up, and thank you for attending this session, and we will put up the recording that I think has been catched perfectly, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening.